Welcome to Fearless with Jason Whitlock. I am Jason Whitlock, your host. Thank you so much for joining me. We have a fantastic show planned for you today. The first part of this show will just be me, and hopefully I'll get to Shemeka Michelle in the latter part of the show, and we'll talk about Michelle Obama and Barack Obama. But I cannot guarantee it. Just keeping it real, I cannot guarantee it because I have a lot on my mind and that needs to be unpacked. And we're going to talk about Joe Rogan's last episode where he had a conversation with comedian Dave Smith and a British historian or journalist, Douglas Murray. And we'll talk about a clip I saw from Tucker Carlson and Alex Jones in a conversation they had about what's going on, the coordinated racial psyop that's going on. And I'll bring Tim Pool into this, the popular podcaster who has put out some content seemingly defending Karmelo Anthony, the murderer in Frisco, Texas, that stabbed a young kid, Austin Metcalf, in the heart and killed him. And I'm going to connect all these things together because this is what is been on my heart and mind. And I'm going to get transparent with you guys in a way that will make me a bit uncomfortable and could trigger emotions in me that I would somewhat be embarrassed to share on this show, just keeping it real. That doesn't mean I'm right to be embarrassed by it, but when you have spent so much time and content making fun of a Randy Moss or a Ryan Clark or even my friend even someone I know, Kirk Herbstreit, for crying on air, you know, I try to resist that urge. But just keeping it real with you, last night I was up crying and crying out to God, rebuking the devil, asking Jesus, the Holy Spirit, to intervene. The things that are on my mind, this conversation that we keep having on this show, it's weighing heavy on me. And just quite frankly, so is because it's all connected, so is the roll call event is weighing quite heavy on me because I have this vision of a harmony, of a togetherness, a sharing of values that if you've listened to this show long enough and I've made reference to it, that I had visions as a 6 and 7-year-old boy of, hey, this is going to be your role in this society, that you're going to continue the mission, continue the task of uniting Americans along shared values, along a biblical worldview. And when you reach a point, you start having these visions when you're 5, 6, 7 years old, you're walking down the street in your neighborhood, in the hood, and you have this vision that has never left your mind. That, you know, hey, this is going to be your role. You're going to speak in front of big crowds and you're going to be bringing people together. And then 50 years later, you feel like, holy cow, we're more divided and have less common ground and have less shared values. And there's this great cultural divide. And you start thinking like, wow, You sacrificed everything because of these visions you started having as a child. You start making decisions in your life that you think are consistent with executing this vision. And then you get to 57, 58 years old, and you start wondering, like, is this an impossible mission? Is this mission impossible? And did you waste your time? And it's been very difficult for me, because you start questioning everything, and you start asking God for understanding and clarity, and you start second guessing, just like, oh, look at this mistake, look at that mistake. And if I had known that 50 years later we would be more divided, more at each other's throats, and more committed to values that separate us, would you have interpreted your vision and life goals and mission? Would you have made a bunch of other different decisions? And so that's how you end up at 2 and 3 in the morning on your knees crying and asking God, like, what am I missing? What am I not doing? And because you know yourself, you sit there and you know, like, there's sin that I haven't fully eliminated. And is that what's standing in my way? Should I just never leave my house? And you know, because that is a way of combat. It's hard to sin all by yourself, and it's hard to sin when you don't do a whole lot. Can't sin on a Stairmaster machine watching Law and Order reruns. I don't think. Maybe I'm wrong for watching. Anyway, I'm going to try to tie a bunch of things together because this is what's on my heart, and I know many of you tune in and, hey, just talk sports, or just, I don't want something that heavy, and I just got to talk about what I'm feeling, and I think it's so important, and I keep seeing other signs like, no, Jason, what you're talking about is exactly what God wants you to talk about. And you have to accept, because, people think I'm being self-deprecating or falsely modest or whatever, but I'm really just telling you the truth. I'm just a fat little dumb kid from Indianapolis. But I was given a gift of writing and communication and discernment. These are gifts. It has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with, how hard I studied in school, all the homework I did. It was a gift given to me by the Holy Spirit or by God, and I can't escape it. And I can't say, I'm gonna leave that alone and just ignore it and just do me. I'm not gonna share it, I guess, is what goes on in my mind. Just, ignorance is bliss. And I haven't been provided that level of bliss. Again, I'm not that smart, but God granted me with a discernment and a vision and a ability to understand and put pieces together that is and look, I'm not the best at it, but it's a gift I have at some level. And probably Alex Jones feels like he has the same gift. Tucker Carlson probably feels like he has the same gift. And I'm not even saying I'm on their level, but in my lane, this analysis of race and how it's being used to promote demonic energy and a demonic culture, yeah, I'm at the top of the field in that. I've been given that gift. And that's not me bragging, that's me saying I was handed a responsibility that's, and I don't want to call it a burden, but it's heavy. And when you can see things that seem so obvious to you and other people can't, people you love can't see it. And when they can't see it, you get frustrated because it's so obvious to you and you've pointed so many things out and they can't see it. Or maybe they don't want to see it. Maybe it's too heavy for them. They don't want to deal with the truth. And this is all of America, all of society. Ignorance is bliss. And people would rather remain blind and have that bliss than to walk around and to be able to see. And it's like that, I think it's the movie called Idiocracy or whatever, where you can see what all the signs actually mean and everybody else can't. And then you're frustrated. And when you see things, and again, this ain't me, y'all. I'm just a dumb, fat kid from Indianapolis that grew up loving Richard Pryor jokes and, people that I idolized or looked up to or were my favorite people on the planet. My Uncle John, my father's friends, Dog and William and AJ, and Donnie Scott, and Knox, and Wesley. These are all working class, manufacturing, factory working guys that used to come into the Masterpiece Lounge, have a drink, talk a little smack, talk sports, bring their wives in. These are just common manufacturing, everyday Americans, and they're your favorite people. They're the people, Slim Carruthers. They're your favorite people on the planet. And I don't know. And so, anyway, I'm going to get to the gist and the substance and the things that I'm seeing, but I'm carrying a burden that feels heavy to me, but it's actually a blessing, and I'm here to share with you all, and I'm trying to inspire you all to come along on a journey that will help us save this country, help us not give in to the racial idolatry that is destroying this country. And, it feels like, for me, and I'm not playing a violin, I've been very blessed, very blessed. But man, I'm like, man, this is going to cost me everything. But won't cost me with God, so it will not cost me everything. But here on this planet, it feels like this is going to cost me everything. I can't get the people I'm closest to and love. They can't see what I can see. And they end up giving in to the idolatry that's so pervasive in this culture, and they don't even understand they're contributing to the destruction of this culture and this country that's been an incredible blessing to us, all of us, everybody that can hear my voice. This country's been a blessing for us, and we're going to surrender it to idolatry. Racial idolatry. That's at the heart of everything that's going on. The racial idolatry is how you mask and cover up all of the malfeasance and dysfunction and the pagan culture. And so sometimes I sit here and I share these things. And I'm like, does the audience get it? Do they understand how important in the time we're in? And then I start seeing signs that, yeah, other people are getting it. Now, again, it's Tucker, it's Alex Jones, it's Joe Rogan, it's Dave Smith, it's these guys. But how do we get it to everyone else so that they fully understand. And I know some of you do understand, but I don't know. I feel like we're in a struggle, and you know, I look out at roll call and how important it is to me, and how important it is for us to come together. And you know, last night when I'm crying out to God and on my knees, and I just start thinking, how do I get more and more people to roll call so that they can see that no, there's a harmony, there's a unity that believers must come together under, regardless of what we look like, so that some form of justice, some form of merit, some form of fairness returns to America, so that we can all get along. This identity politics stuff, this racial idolatry stuff, is why we're not getting along. And that's why I, you know, asked Tucker Carlson to come here, and he's agreed to come here to help me, because I want you all to see what unity actually looks like. And I want the world to see it. That we can't, that Tucker Carlson is out of the Swanson family. Swanson, the TV dinners, the Swanson, the food, blah. He comes from the really uber elite. I come from nothing as it relates to eliteness. That's but I come from a factory worker, Joyce Whitlock, and a father that didn't graduate high school, who owned a little bar in the ghetto, a couple of bars in the ghetto, different times, always one, but come from nothing. And so Tucker Carlson and I, we're not best friends. We don't talk every day. But man, we see the world the same. And we know that we have to come together under one God, one nation, under one God, or this thing is going to get destroyed. Our freedoms that we take for granted are going to get destroyed. So that's I done took 17, 18 minutes just setting up the conversation. Shemeka, be on alert that I could be late. Likely to be late. Because I just set up the conversation. And so that's the setup for the conversation we're about to have. I hope that you stick with me as I unpack this conversation and show you the clues and try to put the meat on the bones or build on the foundation I just laid to help you understand where we're at and what the solution is. And again, I keep repeating the same solution, and so it's, you know, I'm like a good coach or any good leader. You just repeat the same message over and over again. You just find a new way to tell it. But I'm going to do it, and let me quit saying I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. First, though, I want to thank Relief Factor for even making it possible for me to have this conversation. But also, I want to share with you all about the power of Relief Factor and what it can do for you. Because despite everything that I'm going through emotionally, mentally, whatever level of stress I feel, I'm getting that workout in every day. And today, I got on the scale, and I was sitting there before I got on the scale, and I was like, I had this irrational thought. When you spend all night not sleeping, tossing and turning, getting on your knees, praying, screaming out to Jesus, crying, blah, 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 you get somewhat in a little bit of an irrational state. And so somehow I'd made up my mind, I think you've gained weight. I think you've gained weight. And I had that in my mind, knowing like, Jason, how could you gain weight? You've been eating one meal a day, and you're in that gym every single day. And I'm in that gym because Relief Factor is helping me fight my inflammation. And I can work out, and I can move around better. without the little aches and pains that used to really, really bother me and compromise my workouts. Relief Factor is a daily supplement that fights pain naturally. Developed by doctors, Relief Factor doesn't just mask pain temporarily, it helps reduce or eliminate the pain. You can benefit from Relief Factor. And you can find out, because it doesn't work for everybody, but you can find out if it works for you with their 3-week quick start. That's only $19.95. $20. You can find out if there's a natural, drug-free way to relieve yourself of the inflammation and pain that's bothering you and compromising your life. All you have to do, dial 1-800-4-RELIEF. That's 1-800-4-RELIEF. Or you can visit relieffactor.com. All right, let me start unpacking what I'm seeing and connect the dots on the conversation that we have been having on this show about, like, wow, where are we at? They've totally destroyed any thought of racial harmony. And I want to start with, because I've been talking about the Karmelo Anthony, Austin Metcalf tragedy. This is, in my view, a clear-cut case of a 17-year-old child who's been programmed to think that any disrespect that he perceives, whether it's disrespect or not, if he perceives it as disrespect, he has the right and the obligation to escalate that disrespect and respond to that disrespect in a disrespectful manner, all the way up to violence and perhaps deadly violence. Because that's what the pagan culture that he probably doesn't even fully understand has programmed him to think. Black culture, culture. And so Karmelo Anthony, when another 17-year-old kid tells, hey man, you're in the wrong spot, get out of here, you don't belong under our tent, and the kid reaches for his backpack and perhaps touches Karmelo Anthony on the arm, oh, I can kill him now. I can stab him in the chest. And so I've been sitting back looking at people defend Karmelo Anthony's violent response. I'm like, don't you know? Haven't you been trained? You don't put your hands on anybody. You run the risk of them stabbing you in the chest and killing you, or pulling out a gun and killing them. That is the law of the ghetto. That's what that is. And there are people that move to places like Frisco, Texas, that move away from the law of the ghetto. They don't want to live in that world. They don't want to live around people who believe that. And I don't blame them, because I don't want to live under the law of the ghetto. I've lived in the ghetto. I don't want to live by those laws, because it's really the law of the jungle. And I don't want to live in the jungle. No one does. And so when I've seen these alleged black influencers all run out to defend Karmelo Anthony, I'm like, that's a psyop. Someone's paying them to do that. They're stirring racial division intentionally. That's their job, to promote and try to impose. Well, everybody's got to live by the law of the ghetto. And so I want to first, and we're going to play Tim Pool here in a second, but I first want to read you this tweet exchange I had with a young man. Yeah, let's get the law of the jungle tweet up for me. Yeah, let's get his original tweet before do we have both? I know we have my response, but do we have the tweet that triggered me to have that response? I'll call it up myself here. There's my response, and then there's what triggered me. And so and the guy's tweet was very, very short. It wasn't, what land? There it is, law of the jungle. Yeah, he just tweeted at me, This is real easy. Don't put your hands on anyone. And I'm like, what? And he's talking about Karmelo Anthony and Austin Metcalf. And I get where he's coming from, because in the ghetto, in the hood, in prison, there's the law of the jungle. You put your hands on somebody in prison or in the ghetto, or people that have a prison mentality, they get to respond violently. And so I tweeted back at the guy, the law of the jungle, some people don't want to live in the jungle and don't want to be around people who adhere to the laws of the jungle. Prison mentality, avoid it. And so here's the disconnect of, there seems to be a group of people that want to live by the law of the ghetto, and they can't understand how anyone else doesn't obey their rules. And when I look at this and I read this and I see a lot of people promoting this idea, I'm just like, how do you deprogram people from a destructive mentality that they've adopted to survive in the environment that they know, and then they move out to Frisco, Texas, or anywhere else and say, hey, we got to play by these rules. The law of the jungle, the law of the ghetto. This is what applied in this prison mentality, prison culture that I'm involved in, and I'm going to bring it out to Frisco, Texas. And Austin Metcalf is going to learn. You put your hands on me, I get to stab you in the heart. And there are people affirming this. And I understand why people are like, how do I make peace or find common ground with people indoctrinated into this prison culture mentality? It's hard. It's impossible. I don't want to live in that environment. And I don't want you bringing that environment to me, my neighborhood, my experience. I don't want to do that. No one does. You can't have a real human civilized society. That rule can apply in the jungle among animals. It can apply in prison. But I take steps trying to avoid prison because I don't want to live in that environment. There's a real disconnect here. And and perhaps, and I get the people that's like, well, separation is the only answer. And then they go, segregation is the only answer. And I get it. The Bible tells you, come out from among them. That pagan world, come out from among them. The Bible tells you that. And so I get the instinct. And that's why I keep talking about this culture. It's not a skin color thing, because trust me, I know many black people that want to come out from among them, and do as soon as they get enough money. But what they don't do is acknowledge and address the pagan culture that maybe as parents you figured out you don't want to live in that environment, but you want a taste of it. You allow it into your home with the music and the movies and all the earphones, and they ingest more of that pagan culture through the music that they're listening to the TV shows that they're listening to, the influencers that they're following. And the next thing you know, you've left the pagan culture neighborhood, but you've let that infestation of it into your home. And it's like, oh, I had roaches in the ghetto. And when I packed up my belongings from the ghetto, I let a roach or two climb into the box with my clothes and dishes. And I brought that box into my new house, and there were roaches in there. And those roaches came out into my new house And the next thing you know, I got roaches in my new house. And then you start, well, a couple of roaches or two makes me feel like I haven't abandoned that culture. You have to abandon all of that culture. You have to reject all of it. And you can't let it into your home. You can't let it infect your kids. So I've argued on this show, Karmelo Anthony's parents, I think, had all the right intentions. I think they supported this kid. I think they tried to do all the right things. But that black culture, that hip hop culture, they let that into their home. And it infected their child. And the next thing you know, he wanted to dress a little bit like the rappers. He wanted to listen to their music. He wanted to talk like them. And he's been convinced, I'm not black unless I got some of this black culture, hip hop culture in me. If I adopt and obey the rules of the law of the jungle. And so that's been very disconcerting and probably, has me questioning everything. But then when I see conservatives or people that have aligned themselves with conservatives, when I see a handful of them start like, well, you got to understand what Karmelo Anthony was thinking. You got to understand the rules of self-defense. That's when I go, ooh, what is going on here? This is a psyop. And then connect it to what I was telling you about Nick Fuentes all this week and the little movement he's leading. And how they're being told, oh, you're Christian, but nothing I say has to line up with biblical values and a biblical point of view. But trust me, guys, we're still Christians, and we think black people are innately evil. We won't talk about, matter of fact, not only will we not talk about the pagan culture that's been adopted throughout all of America, but there's a particular form of it adopted by black Americans. We won't talk about that. I'm tired of hearing about that. I want to talk about these evil black people. That's unbiblical. As I've explained to you, there's a culture problem, and that's what the Bible continuously talks about. The children of Israel adopting pagan cultures and suffering the consequences. And so I was shocked and shaken up when Tim Pool, someone that I respect, had this take on Karmelo Anthony. And let's play Tim Pool's take.
Says, what is it? Nothing matters but this. He was at a school event at the wrong team's tent with a knife. He clearly chose murder than to walk away, cut and dry here. Nope, wrong. Imagine you are invited to a party at someone else's house and you are legally carrying a firearm. And then a fight breaks out and or like an altercation breaks out between you and some guy and, there's drinking involved or whatever. I'm not trying to make a one-for-one scenario. I'm trying to create a potential scenario separate from this one with similarities. You go to a party. Let's say you go to a party. And some guy starts saying stuff like, yo, man, get out of here. And you're like, I can do what I want. I was invited to the party. Verbal altercation escalates. And then the dude, you're standing there and you pull your sweater back and you've got a gun. And you put your hand up and say, don't come close to me, bro. I'm warning you right now. Do not come close. Do not take another step. Then the guy grabs your arm and makes a move. So you draw your weapon and you use it. Okay, make the argument. You have no right to defend yourself when you're being attacked by a guy. Make the argument. By all means, go ahead and do so. I ain't going to do it. I don't know the circumstances. You can argue that you're in a place you're not supposed to be. You can argue it's that guy's house, and it doesn't matter. A guy can invite you into your neighbor could be like, come on over, brother. And then if he gets physical with you, you can defend yourself. And then what? The police are going to be like, well, you were in his house. And it's like, yeah, you invited me in. It's like, the door was open.
That's a hell of a take. And I'm not trying to pick a fight with Tim Pool, But I'm just, that's an insane take to me, comparing what he's talking about to Austin Metcalf, or even the whole line of thinking. Someone grabs you on the arm and you can't defend yourself. Well, yes, you can. Get your arms off of me. Slap it down. This kid's a former high school athlete, football player, in good condition. I've had my arm grabbed before. I'm a big guy and used to be super strong. But you can push someone's arm off and defend yourself. You don't have to stab anybody in the heart because they grabbed your arm. And they didn't invite him into their tent. This wasn't a party that you got invited to. This is a party that you crashed. And someone said, hey, man, you need to go. You're here with a backpack. This is our tent. Kids aren't stupid. They know what's been going on, and again, have a right to be suspicious of, hey, this guy isn't in our school. This isn't his tent. You need to go. But stabbing someone and so this, when I see this type of defense of that, that is the way I interpret it. I don't know what Tim Pool's intent was, but what it does is justify the Tariq Nasheeds and the other bought and paid for influencers that are trying to gin up racial division by pretending like Austin Metcalf and Karmelo Anthony, well, this is a 50-50 case of self-defense. And now, instead of people looking at them like they're insane and controlled by their racial idolatry, they get to point to Tim Pool and say, see, it's not racial idolatry. Anybody that understands the principles of self-defense understands what Karmelo Anthony was doing and knows that this case isn't cut and dry. It's ginning up racial division on social media. And Tucker Carlson and Alex Jones can see exactly what I'm talking about. I'm gonna get there in a second. They can see exactly what I'm talking about. That there are people stirring up racial division, taking positions that increase the illogic, taking positions that all seem to go one direction. So I'm about to, and some of these people may not even know what they're doing, but they've been given instructions. So I'm going to go to a more uncomfortable place for you all that consider yourselves conservatives. But when you heard me object 2-3 weeks ago to Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire want Donald Trump to pardon Derek Chauvin? What? A federal pardon for Derek Chauvin? He ain't getting released from jail. He's got state second-degree murder charges that will keep him in prison. A federal pardon will get him out of some civil rights violations. But Derek Chauvin, who I believe is wrongfully convicted, he ain't getting out of jail because Donald Trump pardons him from some federal charges. And I was like, what are they trying to stir up here? Donald Trump is 2-3 months into his second term, and we're campaigning for a federal pardon of Derek Chauvin, something that won't get him out of prison. But I can guarantee what it will do is stir up racial division. And so I'm off. If the Daily Wire had announced that, hey, we're starting a GoFundMe for Derek Chauvin's defense to try to help him in the process of overturning his state conviction and federal conviction. Sign me up. Where do I contribute? Derek Chauvin, in my view, is wrongfully convicted. George Floyd died of a drug overdose. George Floyd bickered and argued with the police for 20 straight minutes. George Floyd put himself in position to die of that drug overdose and all that fentanyl he had ingested. And he had done it a year before, and the police, drove him to the hospital, and he luckily saved and survived that. And then he turned around and did it again. And Derek Chauvin just happened to be at the scene of George Floyd's overdose. And did he help George Floyd's overdose by kneeling on his back, shoulders, neck area? No, he did not. But George Floyd put himself in that position. And I'm not going to sit here and throw a tantrum because someone with a death wish died of a drug overdose. And so let me be crystal clear here. Let me be transparent here. If today, tomorrow, next week, breaking news, Jason Whitlock has died of a heart attack, I don't want y'all throwing tantrums. I want y'all to say, man, I wish Jason had lost that weight. I wish Jason hadn't overeaten. I wish he had stayed in the gym, and I wish he had started eating one meal a day 15 years ago. I really want y'all to say that, because that's what needed to be said about George Floyd. Man, I wish he had quit bickering and arguing with the police. I wish he had quit using fentanyl, because if you're going to use drugs constantly and bicker and argue with police, I know how that's going to end. Dead or in jail. But we're so overcome with emotion and racial idolatry, we've got such a feminized culture that we think emotion and empathy needs to be showered on any and everything rather than deal with the consequences of our behavior. We got to toughen up this culture, and everybody has to be willing to deal with the consequences of their behavior. And so if you build a culture that disavows, avoids marriage, that disavows and avoids staying together to raise the kids that you have brought into the world, there's some consequences you have to deal with. You've adopted a pagan lifestyle and culture, and there are dire consequences for that. And so there's a disconnect between people that understand the consequences of adopting a pagan culture and people that want to rationalize, explain away, shower empathy on the people that have adopted a pagan culture and excuse them for adopting a pagan culture that destroys them in any place they show up. And so that's why on this show you hear me say, everybody needs to disavow, rebuke, and call out the pagan culture that's destroying Black people and America. That's empathy. Biblical truth is empathy. You throwing pity parties and pretending like, man, I was just on a double date with George Floyd. We just had him over to our house for dinner and coffee. Oh, I was setting my daughter up on a blind date with George Floyd. If Derek Chauvin hadn't snuffed him out, George Floyd was going to discover a cure for cancer. all that cosplay that you do, so you can justify your racial idolatry. You don't have sympathy and emotion and tears for a 17-year-old straight A student headed to for a college football scholarship and Christian who was killed, stabbed in the heart for potentially, who knows, grabbing the arm of Karmelo Anthony. But the drug addict, career criminal, who argued and bickered with police and took enough fentanyl to kill Secretariat and Seabiscuit, you got all the tears and empathy and sympathy for him. It's an endless amount. There's a disconnect. And there are people using that disconnect, trying to put into emotion a racial conflict that spins out of control. And I'm not the only one that can see it. Tucker Carlson and Alex Jones can see it. Stick with me. I'm going to play you this clip, and it's about a 4-minute clip. Tucker Carlson and Alex Jones, who I have not talked to about this. I know many of you out there, there's collusion among Jason and Tucker Carlson. They're doing an event together in Nashville. They always talk nicely about each other. They're friends. You know who we're colluding with? God. Anybody that is on their knees, anybody that's praying out and crying out to God, please, God, explain to me what's going on here. Please, God, help me stop what's going on in this pagan culture. Anybody that's doing that, God is telling them, hey, here's what's going on. He's providing them discernment. He's allowing them to look beyond what most people can see. Get on your knees and ask God for discernment. Then get in your Bible and say, show me where in the Bible, God, I can find this discernment. Start talking to other people that are on the same journey as you, this Christian journey and Christian walk. Then you'll be able to see and be able to connect the dots. And then when you see other people that can see what you can see, you don't need to have talked to them about it. They're talking to the same God as you, and they're looking for answers in the same place you're looking for them at. And then you all start saying the same thing without ever talking to each other. I'm going to play you this clip between Tucker Carlson and Alex Jones. Before I do that, I want to talk to you guys about real estate agents I trust. You guys know I went through the home buying process, home renovation process. The home buying process I went through was more complicated because I didn't know what I was doing. And it's not like it's the first house that I bought, but first house I bought here in Nashville. And it took me some time to find the right real estate agent. I had to go through this guy, that girl, that guy, this girl, before I found Brandy, who hooked me up, got me into the right home. Could have cut all that out if Glenn Beck had told me about the company he had started, Real Estate Agents I Trust. They pair you with a top-selling real estate agent in your area. Someone who knows the best practices, someone who understands the crazy housing market, someone who's a team leader and a closer, someone you can trust. If you're thinking about buying or selling a home, or both, please get in touch with them. You'll see what I mean. Real Estate Agents I Trust, name tells you everything you need to know. Go to realestateagentsitrust.com. That's realestateagentsitrust.com. Thank you, Glenn, belatedly. Next time I buy a house, I'll be using you guys. Well, it depends on what city it is. But anyway, realestateagentsitrust.com. Let's get to the clip. And this is a 4-minute clip of Tucker Carlson and Tucker Carlson and Alex Jones. And when I saw someone tweeted me about it this morning, then I looked it up and I saw it and I was like, holy cow, we're saying the same thing. And I haven't talked to Tucker or Alex Jones about this. Play the clip.
I want to make a prediction because I just want to be on tape saying this. I'm going to say it again even more clearly this time. And of course, I hope I'm wrong. I pray I'm wrong. But I do think a lot of the really crazy, bitter, ethnic hate that you see on social media is fake. It's people were saying it don't mean it. I think it's like, the Klansmen you'd see marching and you're like, there are no Klansmen. And you're like, what? And of course you find out that it's fake. And it's designed to convince people that there's like a lot of roiling ethnic hatred that doesn't really exist. And that's a predicate to
Patriot Front.
Exactly. It's Charlottesville. But that's happening online right now. And I know that it is. And I think that at some point, I pray I'm wrong, but there's going to be an act of violence, ethnic inspired violence, of hate inspired violence, actual hate, like killing people. And I really hope I'm wrong, but I feel like this is real. And that event will be used to shut down free speech on social media. Because that is the threat. And you saw it with TikTok, like, oh, we need to ban TikTok because China owns it. No, nothing to do with China. It had everything to do with opinions that the people in charge didn't like being expressed there. And it's like, we're just going to, and the Congress went along with it. But if there's an act of violence and innocents are murdered, and I pray that doesn't happen because I hate that above all, but it has happened and I feel like it could happen again. And people say, and a lot of good people will go along with it, just like they went along with the censorship of you and the destruction of your life because they were told like he's bad. He had something to do with murdering children. And then people just shut down. They're like, I don't know. Alex Jones is sending with murdering children. So whatever they do to Alex Jones, like, is fine.
And I can't tell you how many times in front of my family, people walk up and they go, you killed those kids.
Exactly.
And I'll always go, really? I did, huh? And why am I walking around? And then just like, well, you know what you did. But what you said is so important. The last ingredients is the false flag on a big illegal alien demonstration or a black church. Because the Democrats keep saying, Trump's coming to kill the migrants. We got to rise up.
Yeah, or something else like that. But where innocents are murdered by a crazy person, or maybe an actual crazy person used, or whatever, or maybe it just happens organically. Maybe if you stoke enough ethnic division online, it's clearly bad. I mean, there are people who have, views that are, are mad at other ethnicities. I mean, that's real, okay? But there are also big actors who are not real. They're doing it on purpose.
And we know who they are.
Yes, we do know who they are.
And for strategic reasons.
I don't want to get involved in all that filth, but
let's just say we've seen the documents separately.
100%. And they're stoking this stuff, and maybe it just organically inspires someone to commit murder, a mass murder. And again, I just pray, as someone who hates all violence, to say it again, I pray that's not the case. But
let's just say this. The people they're mainly attacking are the ones financing them. It's the oldest trick in the book, Hegelian dialectic, and so just be aware of that, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, and I just don't, and I think and the only reason I bring that up is because I worry about it every day.
I do too, because that's the next big move.
Free speech is the foundation of a free society. Without it, it's not a free society. You're a slave. If you can't say what you think, you're a slave. It's really simple. And we don't have slavery in this country. It's a free country.
And when it happens, I pray it doesn't. That's the next move. So we're predicting this so that there's enough eyes and ears on it and enough people watching so they don't pull it off. Because that's the thing. Everything I used to predict basically came true because the globalists were still in power. They're so disorganized, have so many problems now. A lot of times when we're able to get out ahead of things, you and others and Trump and Joe Rogan, we're able, and Elon's with a huge voice, second only to Trump, we're able to disrupt what they're doing and enough people see through it. So if it does happen, they try to stampede us into blaming whoever it is. Oh, the Crooks guy, he acted alone. Well, this will be some right-wing Trump supporter with a MAGA hat.
100%.
That'll get killed by the SWAT team.
He was inspired by hate online. Therefore, you're not allowed to have like legitimate opinions or your own opinions. And, God can decide whether they're legitimate or not. But if you're a free man, a free person, you have a right to say what you really believe, period. And that cannot be encumbered or else you're a slave.
Absolutely.
That is everything that I believe. And if you connect the dots on the shows that I've done this week, and you connect the dots, why, and this is without collusion with them. I'm telling you, if I'm colluding with anybody, or who I'm trying to collude with, is God. And so what God put on my heart, or my understanding of what I feel like God put on my heart, has caused me to do this week's worth of shows that keep pointing to like, hey man, they want to use Karmelo Anthony and Austin Metcalf to spark serious racial conflict. And I want to point to you, to people that I think, and I use the word Patriot Front as to say that, again, for those of you that don't speak urban dialect, someone's fronting as a patriot. That's how I used Patriot Front this week when talking about Nick Fuentes. He's fronting as a patriot. But his real job is to disconnect you from a biblical worldview and get you to give into your racial idolatry. And so they want you mad at the black racial idolaters. And you should be. But your response can't be white racial idolatry. That's a mistake. If you're not pointing to Christ while claiming Christianity, while claiming Christ as king, you're somebody's asset being used, and as Alex Jones says, they're attacking people that are financing them to throw you off the trail. Oh, I'm against the leftists. Oh, I'm against the Zionists. But your tactics are leftists and Zionists. So when the scales come off your eyes and you start looking around and say, oh, what is going on here? They're setting the table for some sort of violent racial conflict. They're trying to provoke some MAGA supporting, misled person into, hey, look at this Karmelo Anthony deal. Look at all these black racial idolaters and their support of Karmelo Anthony. And you know what? When we release, and this was my prediction this week that I told you about, that at some point they're going to release the video of Austin Metcalf and Karmelo Anthony. And it's going to be grotesque. And it's going to show someone with no emotional control. This is my prediction. If I'm wrong, trust me, I'll cop to it and say, huh, I'm glad I was wrong. But I think it's going to show a 17-year-old with no impulse control who's been programmed to thinking, well, I was disrespected and I get to respond violently and overtop the fashion that killed a 17, both of these kids are beautiful kids. Both of them, you know, just any parent would be, oh man, that's my son. Wow. But the kid on the right, 4.0 student, devout Christian, headed to college on a football scholarship. And I've told you all, I've been talking to people in Frisco, Texas, and I've talked to people that knew both of these boys. And I've talked to people with no agenda in this. Like that kid on the right, named Austin, anytime I engage with him, holy cow, what a beautiful kid, what a beautiful spirit. That ain't what they've said about Karmelo. Looks great on the outside, comes from a supportive family. They have a great home. They're doing everything they can for Karmelo. Well-intentioned parents. But he had that hip-hop, rap, music industry, black culture mentality and ran with kids that had that mentality. And you got some of that energy when his parents weren't around or in the right situation. And Austin Metcalf got some of that energy, and it cost Austin Metcalf his life. That's my prediction. I hope that I'm wrong. But that's where my instincts are telling me. That's what my discernment. And so when I'm telling you all last night, I'm crying out and I'm on my knees and I'm on my feet and I'm screaming out and I'm rebuking the devil and I'm asking God, why me? Why am I with this burden? I don't want this discernment. I do want it, but I don't want it. I don't. It's just too heavy. It's separating me from people that I love. And what do I do? How do I? I'm not that smart. But I've been given a gift that God wants me to use to try to assist or contribute to getting people to see beyond their superficial racial differences. And so when I sit here and tell you 2 years ago, hey, Stephen A. Smith is running for president, that ain't me. That's God. He's given me a gift that I can read a book and immediately start connecting dots and blah, 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 and all this other stuff. It's not me. And I'm not that smart. But he's put me on a path of seeking his wisdom, seeking others that are seeking his wisdom, and putting me in an environment where I'm talking to people and engaging with people that are truly and genuinely seeking his wisdom. And that's elevating a fat, chubby, dumb kid from Indianapolis in his discernment. And then I'm sharing it with you all. And so that's what, if we dial the clock back to January 6th of 2021, I could point to you all on January 6th when, you know, the worst insurrection in the history of America, worse than Pearl Harbor and worse than 9/11 and blah, blah, blah. And on January 6th, I'm telling y'all, nah, this ain't it. They lying. They're exaggerating. They're using this. And I told several friends of mine, but one in particular that called me and was talking about the January 6th deal, and I was like, oh man, they're going to throw the book at these people. They're going to bury these people underneath the jail. Oh, my friend, no, they're not. What is trespassing? It's blah, blah, blah. I was like, are you kidding me? These people are going straight to jail, straight to prison. They're going to be treated like they're Charles Manson. And that's why on January 7th, when I wrote the column defending the January 6th people, that ain't me. I'm not that smart. And I've gone back and read my column from January 7th, and I've shared it with you all pretty consistently. And every day, and now that we're here in 2025, people are like, oh, wow, how are you this far ahead? It ain't me. And I don't know if hopefully I'll be proven wrong. But when I saw this clip this morning, I said, Tucker Carlson and Alex Jones can see what I see? That they're using assets on the right and the left, and they're using, they didn't say it, but they're using Karmelo Anthony and Austin Metcalf potentially as another Charlottesville, and they're hoping to spark someone they can frame up as a Trump MAGA supporter, and this is why we must take away their free speech, and this is how dangerous these people are on X. They can see what I can see. They must be consulting the same man, the same king, the same savior that I'm consulting with. And so I don't know if these next two people I'm talking about, and I'm attempt to land this plane and bring all this together about this cultural divide, this cultural disconnect. You can see it everywhere. I'm sorry, I'm so deep off into this. I gotta check myself here. Yeah, the cultural disconnect. I want to move to that. And Joe Rogan, Dave Smith, this Douglas Murray, they had a podcast yesterday. Dave Smith versus Douglas Murray. Dave Smith is a comedian who's turned into a bit of a cultural critic and laces a lot of his podcast appearances with conversations about, global politics. And, he's an American citizen. Dave Smith is a Jew who doesn't seem to be all the way on board with Zionism. I've been following Dave Smith on X for a number of years. I find him a very honest person, a transparent person, a wise person, and just someone that's fair. And so I don't fully understand Dave Smith's perspective, because I follow about 800 people on X. But I am aware, this dude is 100% honest and seems to not be in line with what the establishment wants everyone to think and feel. And he really frustrates people because he's Jewish and doesn't seem to get on board with just defending Israel at every turn. And then he's debating a guy, Douglas Murray, who's an author and a historian and an expert. And he's, I assume from the UK, he's got a thick British accent. I didn't know this when I tuned into the podcast, but Douglas Murray made it clear during the podcast. And so you'll think I have this bias against Douglas Murray because he's gay. I didn't know that when I tuned into the podcast, but he made reference of it, and he's hardcore LGBTQIA+. I didn't know that. I heard him talk about it, then I've heard other people reference it, but he's the expert class. And he got on the podcast and immediately dominated the conversation and was scolding Joe Rogan for the guest that he had on. And Joe Rogan didn't have enough of the historians and the experts on to talk about what's going on between Israel and Palestine, what's going on in Gaza, what's going on with people like Daryl Cooper, Martyr Made, or Ian Carroll that have questions about Winston Churchill's role in World War II. And they're not experts. And Joe, you need to have more experts on. And I'm watching this, and I'm seeing the same cultural divide that I see in the racial space. And hey, we don't have any shared values. There are people that want to give in to prison culture, and they want the world to operate on prison values and prison culture. And if you put your hand on someone, you have a right to kill them. And so this debate that Joe Rogan had with these two guys, there's one guy, Douglas Murray, arguing that, hey, those of you that haven't been stamped with approval and financed by the establishment, you haven't been flown around to different countries on some grant or some sort of financing, you don't have a right to have an audience and state your opinion, and you don't have a right to be platformed by Joe Rogan. And Joe, you're irresponsible for bringing Ian Carroll onto your podcast and have a 3-hour conversation with Ian Carroll where 20 of those minutes are talking about Ian Carroll's feelings about Israel and maybe touches on World War II. You can't do that. You need to have me and other approved conservative historians on. And he immediately started the conversation off. He hijacked the conversation and wanted to scold Joe Rogan and make Joe Rogan and Dave Smith debate what Ian Carroll said and what Daryl Cooper said. And I was watching this and I'm like, this guy has hijacked the conversation from the outset, and now Joe Rogan and Dave Smith have to spend all their time debating the thoughts of Daryl Cooper and Ian Carroll rather than talking about reacting to Douglas Murray's perspective. And then Douglas Murray's perspective, offensive to me. What did I tell you at the very beginning to this, what my worldview is? Very factory worker, working class, everyman perspective. And I think I'm right in line with what's going on globally, but right here in America, there's a rejection of the expert elite class. They've told so many lies. They've misled so many times. They've been wrong so many times that I just want some good old-fashioned common sense to have a chance. And that's what Dave Smith kept trying to argue. And so I want to play you this clip. It's about 3 minutes of them going back and forth, and it crystallized for me like this cultural disconnect. And like, there's a group of elites that want to tell us what to think and what to do. And that group of elites has been wrong so many times on so many important issues that us on the other side is like, no, we ain't doing that. Dr. Fauci, them people, nah, I'm good. He's been pre-approved. He's got the right title. He's a scientist. I ain't doing that. I don't trust the science. I trust God. I don't trust the science. And so the fat, dumb kid from Indianapolis, here's what I did during COVID is I sat here and I said on the show, you can go check the tapes. I was like, hey, look, if you're a young person and in good health, I don't know, be careful to stay away from that vaccine. It just doesn't add up. If you're an older, fat person with comorbidities, maybe you should think about the vaccine, but, you know, be careful. And so me, and that's just me trying to be responsible. But what I did with me was I said, hey, I'm a fat person, not in a great shape, but I'm going to lean on God's understanding, not my own. He gave me an immune system. And I don't think the people in China, I don't think Fauci, I don't think anybody has created something that's better than God's immune system. And that if I just provide God's immune system with the tiny bit of help that it requires. Quit eating all that garbage, Jason. Make sure you're exercising every day and let God handle the rest. And that was me stepping out on faith. And so there was no chance of me taking that vaccine. None. And I didn't. And I didn't make a big show of it. I didn't sit here and beat my chest about it because I didn't want to talk anybody else into doing something they may regret. But, and maybe they don't have my worldview, but I decided, like, just doesn't make sense. They created something in a lab that's better than what God designed. I just don't trust the science. And people like Dave Smith and others, Steve Deace here on this network, they like did their own research and looking into it, and they was like, nah, I'm good. This is a scam. Whereas people like Douglas Murray trust the science, trust the experts. But let me play you the clip, and then you can see this cultural divide that is clear as day between the elite rulers that are very upset that Joe Rogan and Tucker Carlson and others are saying, don't trust them people. They've been lying to you, and I can prove they've been lying to you. They get their financing from the establishment, from government, from NGOs. Don't trust them. Play the clip.
Okay. That doesn't mean we are on the verge of a war. I mean, you keep referring to we being in wars. There's a very big difference between a country having a military that's engaged and a country being at war. This country has not been at war for 25 years. You have not been fighting for the American homeland for 25 years.
Yes, we haven't. That's true.
Right.
We haven't had a war
Right.
on our shores. We've been picking on third world countries halfway around the world.
Well, you haven't been randomly picking on them. I mean, Afghanistan, you went...
I didn't say it
into-
was random.
Yeah, right, okay. It wasn't like you suddenly decided to bomb, again, Myanmar or something. You went for Afghanistan to find bin Laden and take revenge for 9/11 and stop an attack like that happening again on the American homeland. That is very different from a country being at war.
Yeah, but
Having-
that's a total mischaracterization of the war in Afghanistan. It's one thing to say that might be an accurate characterization of the special operations mission in late 2001, but then
I'm
we
saying-
fought
yes,
a
because then
20-year regime
yes,
change war against the Taliban.
Because you got dragged into the quicksand of war.
Oh,
Yes.
Okay, fine, but
Fine.
I thought it wasn't a war. Like, what? I don't get
No,
your
I
argument.
said it was a war. It's your use of we, as if you're personally like suffering this war. I mean,
Yeah,
you're a
yes,
taxpayer.
when I say we,
we're
it
taxpayers,
implied,
so we
okay.
pay for it. Okay, fine.
Douglas, would
But,
you go,
mean,
if I went back and corrected you on every time you've used the term "we" to refer to your government or something like that? Like, if I were to say, "Oh, we
it's
just
fine,
imposed tariffs on China,"
it's
would you point out that
take
I
it-
didn't,
you
and it was the
take
Trump
it-
administration?
I'm saying you take it obviously very personally, and that's your right to do so, of course. I'm just trying to make sure we're accurate here.
What do you think I'm taking personally?
just that, the American wars.
Sure, yeah, I think
Yeah.
they've killed hundreds of thousands of people and cost my country $8 trillion and
Sure.
and degraded my country very much.
And there's a very good argument to make on that. I'm still slightly bemused about this move from I'm an expert on this and I have views to I'm a comedian.
I've never claimed to be an expert on anything.
This is the problem, Joe. I mean, if somebody
Wait a minute,
says
you have to claim to be an expert on something to have an opinion on something?
you don't have to be. You don't have to be. But
So what's
this is
the
like
issue?
I'm not a historian, but I'm pumping out history.
But wait a minute,
I'm
what
not
about
an expert,
just-
but I'm
you-
talking all the time about
But
this
you're not
thing.
even talking about specifically on what he just said.
No, I'm saying this is my point about this. You say I'm not an expert.
So what's the solution? To not talk about it?
No, it's to have more experts around.
Well, the expert
To
class
hear-
hasn't done a great job,
I know.
man. This is follow the science.
Absolutely,
Yeah, but you know what?
absolutely, I
okay,
agree
so fine.
with
so
that.
during,
I just said
okay,
to you,
so,
I agree
right,
with that.
Right, I know.
But
so
one of the
Douglas,
problems
during
is-
all of COVID,
Fire away.
I will put my track record against any of the expert class on COVID. I'm glad to do that. So should I have just shut up? Should I have shut up by opposing lockdowns and opposing vaccine mandates
No.
and
Well,
talking
that
about
was
the
the
lab leak
argument at the
theory?
time. You
That's
realize
that's
that,
the
right?
entire argument that you're making. Let the
No,
experts
I'm
handle
not-
that.
All of that from start to finish. The Douglas Murray. Let me walk you through. And he's written a bunch of books. People love it. People in the conservative movement, alleged conservative movement, the intellectual dark web, the people that are the faces of that, they love this guy. And they're running around screaming about how great he was on the Joe Rogan podcast and how he put Dave Smith in his place and how intelligent he seemed. And so the intellectual dark web, Bari Weiss, Dave Rubin, Jordan Peterson. This is what they represent and think is who we all should be listening to. Some condescending expert that's like, there are these pre-approved people that have been educated in the right places, and because I'm not showing you this, but they got in this big argument about, you haven't even been there. You haven't been to Gaza. How can you have an opinion on it? I've been there with my own eyes and seen. I should be on the Joe Rogan program. I should be popular. My book sales should be skyrocketing. That's what he's arguing. This is out and out jealousy and elitism. Joe, you need more experts. These people you're platforming, they're beneath me. Don't you know I was financed to go to Gaza and reach the right conclusions? This idiot hasn't been to Gaza. That's what he's arguing. You need more experts. And they're sitting, these experts done taking us straight to hell. You know, we had an expert, I think his name was Colin Powell. They got weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. And he was wrong. And this guy, I'm not playing the clip, but Dave Smith was like, hey, bro, you had feet on the ground in Ukraine, and wrote and talked about how Ukraine could win the war and the conflict with Russia. You supported the Iraq war, and you were wrong. And so, now keep in mind, I am a journalist. I believe in boots on the ground journalism. But when the boots on the ground are bought and paid for boots that are financed and put there so they can draw a predetermined conclusion, that's when you don't trust them. And then the most offensive thing in that clip, and I hope you caught it, you're acting like you're actually in war. Like you're experiencing the consequences of war yourself. You're taking all of this personally. Why are you using the word we? That's the elitist attitude that is deadly. Let me translate that for you. Don't you understand? We're sending the peasants off to war, not you. You're a well-paid comedian. You're an elite like me. We don't go to war. Peasants die in war. Why do you care? If we bomb little babies and women into oblivion, why would you take that personally? Don't you know who dies in war? It's not us. We're the elite. Why would you be upset by this? Are you kidding me? When I argue that there's a demonic spirit running through these elitist, Freemason leftists, closeted leftists, because that dude ain't really conservative. Not that I care much about conservatives. Maybe he is conservative. Because again, what I'm saying, these political uniparty elites, it doesn't matter whether you're conservative or liberal. They all have the same mentality. The death of peasants shouldn't bother you. Don't you know how much money Joe Rogan makes? This man shouldn't be bothered by women and children being bombed into oblivion. You're not experiencing the consequences of war. The peasants are. And people are defending this clown. You can go on X and all of the intellectual dark web, the geniuses, they're all defending this clown. They're all defending this mentality. This you guys hear me talk about preborn and abortion constantly, and about how you have to get into a biblical worldview, that life begins at conception and that all life is valuable, and how all this stuff is connected. And so when you think that, no, that baby in the womb, that ain't no baby, that's something we can stick something up there, crush it in the womb, suck it out. This whole abortion culture, pagan abortion culture, it's connected to that. Don't you understand, Joe, Dave? We're just aborting peasants. You're not living the consequences of war. The peasants are. We're aborting them. They serve no purpose. I don't understand, Dave, why you're so emotional about babies being bombed into oblivion. You sound like Candace Owens and these other religious zealots who don't understand that the elites, those of us who enjoy ingesting another man's penis, we are the people that matter, not the peasants, not those of you with a biblical worldview that think all lives matter. It's all connected. The LGBTQIA plus mentality, the abortion mentality, the elitist mentality, the people that think there's a handful of elites that matter more than everyone else. People are defending what this man was saying. How dare Dave Smith object to his tax dollars being used to fight endless wars and bomb women and children? How dare he object? Why would you take that personally? Trust the science. Trust the experts. The experts are evil. That's why we don't trust them. They're not in alignment with God. That's why we don't trust them. And I don't know what Dave and Joe think, but they just seem to have a heart and a head. But when I watched that, I was like, look at this cultural divide. Look at this cultural disconnect. It's the exact same cultural disconnect I'm looking at in America. There are those of us that have submitted to a biblical worldview. We reject racial idolatry, and we want to distance ourselves from the racial idolaters, whether they're black or white, because they're out of line with reality, with biblical truth, with truth. I don't even need to put the biblical in it because there is no truth without the Bible. And so all the people that are running around trying to be combatants in a black-white racial war, that's not biblical truth. That's pagan culture adopted by both sides that they want to spread and they want to infect your mind with so that you will surrender your freedom And once you surrender your freedom and freedom of speech, when you surrender your freedom of speech, that's how you get laws on the book. Hey, you can't quote the Bible because it may hurt someone's feelings. And so the LGBTQIA plus expert, Douglas Murray, he don't want you quoting the Bible about homosexual sex. And the Zionist doesn't want you criticizing Israel because they are the chosen people and they exist in a special category that's above criticism. It's unbiblical. This is the cultural disconnect. And Joe Rogan, and again, I don't know about Dave Smith, but Joe Rogan and Dave Smith are starting to figure out, what have I been telling you for several years? It's like even, now he'll never admit it, but even Bill Maher, who's got a whole brand built on being anti-Christian and anti-religion, this man started figuring out like, oh man, Christian culture gives me more free speech and more freedom as a comedian than this secular anti-God society that we're building. And so Bill Maher started throwing up smoke signals to Christians and to conservatives. Hey, guys, I kind of like the culture you guys built, and, you know, I can't say it because I got this brand that I built that I'm supposed to hate you all, and so I'm going to continue to dump on Donald Trump, but I'm going to crack enough jokes on the other side that you think I'm on your team. And it's all because he's figured out, and he can't walk back his idolatry. He can't walk back the brand he's built to get to the real truth. If the man was honest and transparent, he'd come out and say, well, look, I'm not getting on board with Christianity, but man, I want some Christian culture back here in America because I was freer then. It's Adam Carolla, I was on his podcast. He's kind of agnostic, but when I was on his podcast, he flat out said, man, I'd rather live next door to a Christian than one of these hardcore atheists. Clear as day. There's a cultural disconnect. And Joe Rogan and Dave Smith, and again, I don't know about Dave Smith, but I think Joe Rogan's some agnostic or, you know, maybe atheist, I don't know. But he's figuring out that you can only have freedom in a society that embraces a biblical worldview. This secular stuff does not lead to freedom. And this secular stuff has zero, despite all their pretending, oh, I'm a leftist, and I just care about the poor, and I just want what's best for the poor. They want just the opposite. Douglas Murray just made that crystal clear. Why do you keep saying we? You're not experiencing the consequences of war. The peasants are. You shouldn't care. And I know he claims to be some sort of conservative, but he's just a closeted leftist. His real agenda is to protect the LGBTQIA plus movement. That movement, I'm sorry, y'all can get upset with me, but I'm just stating facts here. I'm not trying to pick on any group, but there's no more gay affirming place than Israel. Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv makes San Francisco feel like Dallas, Texas. And so, you know, my values, our values are being demonized. The people that are tired of the expert class are being demonized. We're the dumbest people on the planet, despite the results of the expert class blowing up in their face right and left, and they are panicking. Alex Jones is 1,000% correct. They don't have the control that they used to have. And so they're panicking. And that's why they're running out their controlled opposition. They're running them out to run cover and start defending leftist positions. And that's why this man very arrogantly came on Joe Rogan's podcast and let everybody know exactly what he thinks. And now you have to deal. This is not some, oh, I know he's written books and I love his books. That man does not have a biblical worldview. If he had a biblical worldview, he wouldn't be on Joe Rogan's podcast bragging about loving male penis. Wouldn't happen. Before I land this plane, I want to tell you about a fun event you can do this weekend starting today. Angel Studios has come out with another movie that supports a biblical worldview. These Angel Studios is the studio that put out Sound of Freedom. I'm sure you saw that. And now they've got a movie, The King of Kings. It's out today, in theaters today. It's a story about a father that tells his son the greatest story ever told. And what begins as a bedtime story becomes a life-changing journey. Through vivid imagination, the boy walks alongside Jesus, witnessing his miracles, facing his trials, and understanding his ultimate sacrifice. The King of Kings invites us to rediscover the enduring power of hope, love, and redemption through the eyes of a child. This film has a high-profile cast of voices, including Oscar Isaac, Pierce Brosnan, Mark Hamill, Ben Kingsley, Uma Thurman, Forrest Whitaker, just to name a few. There is also beautiful animation, and it's the perfect film to enjoy with your family this Easter. I encourage you to see The King of Kings in theaters right now. Get your tickets today at angel.com/Jason. That's angel.com/Jason. So there was an email. I'm going to tie this all back together and go back to the beginning of the law of the ghetto and just this jungle mentality. There's an email I received yesterday, I believe, or the day before. And it was a guy that watched some of my content earlier this week and was like, and made an analogy. Call up the email, please. Made an analogy. It's a full screen we have. Oh, yeah, there we go. Put it there. He made an analogy to prison culture and this division that's being promoted. And he analogized it to what goes on inside of a prison. And it struck home with me because those of you that have followed me for a long time know that I wrote an article in 2007, 2008 for Playboy magazine. It was about Jim Brown. It was about Jim Brown's program, America I Can. That's the article for Playboy. It's titled wrong, and those of you that have followed me, let's take that off the screen, though. Playboy, it's pornography, and I'm not super proud that, or super impressed or pleased with myself that I used to write for Playboy, but it used to be a place where you could do great journalism. But anyway, it was a story about, I know the title says Black KKK, and those of you that follow me know I fell out with Playboy about that title. That they took an article I did that was really sound piece of journalism about prison culture and the impact of incarceration nation, and that you lock up this many people and there are ramifications and consequences of that. And I'm like, we're exporting prison values to the rest of culture by incarcerating this many people. And so that article, 2007, 2008, and you can read it now, ignore the headline, the Black KKK, because that never appears in the article. That was Playboy diminishing, sensationalizing a piece that I wrote And, you know, Google Jason Whitlock and Playboy. Chris Napolitano, I think, was the managing editor, the editor that did that to me, and I went to war with him. And, you know, this was the beginning of my disconnect from these leftist organizations. It was just the beginning. You know, it wasn't until I, you know, went back to ESPN the second time. But regardless, I'm rambling. But when I told you about the discernment that I've been blessed with and the writing ability that I've been blessed with, that it has nothing to do with me, and the fact that, you know, sometimes I'm well ahead of the conversation. It's not me. I got a gift that I didn't understand, used to think it was some sort of reflection on me, came into full understanding that nothing I accomplish, nothing I do that has any benefit, that's any good, that's God. It's not me. Now, the bad stuff that I do, that's me. Trust me, that's me, because I'm an idiot. But anyway, a young man, I don't know if young or old man, but a man emailed me this week. While listening to your last show, I was struck by a thought regarding the continual stoking of racial division as well as others. It all reminds me of prison culture, particularly in California. And so I'm going to stop and pause there for a second. That's so fascinating because the article I did in 2007-8 for Playboy that I wanted to be entitled Incarceration Nation, it examines the California prison system and how it contributes to gang culture and how that gang culture plays out inside prisons and how it's infecting the rest of society. And it talked about the feud and the war between prison guards and prisoners and how California has incarcerated so many people and employs so many correctional officers to control those prisoners that the correctional officers union in California became the most well-financed and influential political influencer in the state of California. And that the correctional officers and their union had incredible influence over the state of California. And that was leading California to all the problems that it has that, you know, I'm not taking a dump on correctional officers, but when people that spend all day inside of a prison working with some of the worst people on the planet, when they have incredible influence over the politics and the politicians and the running of your state, there's going to be consequences and problems for that. But anyway, I'm going to go back to the email. The COs, the man wrote to me, COs or correctional officers, are comfortable when the races are focused on each other. But when the races find common cause and sit down together in solidarity against the guards, the COs get uncomfortable and scared. Rightly so in most instances. Whoever is pulling the strings from behind the curtain in our perceived reality is trying to maintain control by pitting groups against each other. Christianity is the one religion that cannot be controlled by authoritarian regimes. This is my opinion. And this is my message to you all. It's why I keep coming back to Christ. It's our only protection. It's our only true unifier. And we keep ignoring that. And how they keep us ignoring that is by pitting us against each other, black and white, superficial. And they put the seeds and plant the seeds and put into motion events that hammer and keep us divided. And I keep saying to you all, they want to use the Karmelo Anthony, Austin Metcalf, a clear-cut case of murder and violence that must be stopped and must be eliminated and not normalized in this society. A 17-year-old kid putting his hand on another 17-year-old kid in no way justifies murder and stabbing that kid in the heart. It just doesn't. And so they've created this confusion and they've created this conversation and made a controversy out of this. This is all intentional. Other people can see it. If you pay attention, you can see it. Alex Jones and Tucker Carlson can see it. Joe Rogan and Dave Smith more than likely can see it. There's no way anybody watches that podcast from yesterday with Dave Smith and Douglas Murray and Joe Rogan trying to referee it can see. Look at this cultural divide, this elite versus populist mentality or versus populist mentality. There's a disconnect there that's like, well, something's got to give. We can't live by the law of the jungle. Those of us that believe in Christ, those of us that believe in law and order, or those of us that believe in an orderly society, we're struggling to find peace with the people that want to impose a prison mentality on how America operates. And those of us that have made enough mistakes listening to the experts, believing the experts, we can't find common ground with people that, nope, only the experts should be platformed and only the experts should be listened to. That's going to be hard to find common ground with because the pre-approved experts, no. Nope. Can't do that. They've led us astray way too many times. And so in landing this plane, as it relates to the black-white racial idolatry, one of the big problems as it relates to black racial idolatry is we have convinced ourselves that assimilation is a negative. And you can see it all over American culture. No one wants to assimilate. Everybody wants to move here and then set up their little versions of Somalia or whatever country they came from right here in America. They don't want to assimilate. Too many black Americans. Assimilation is selling out. And then there are those of us that are like, no. Christianity wants you to assimilate into a biblical worldview, into biblical values. And our shared values are what make this country strong and great. And so we're begging out to, hey, assimilate into this culture. Or at least be respectful of it, be appreciative of what it provides for everybody else. But this whole anti-assimilation movement, this I can't think like, I can't do like, yep, that group, Christians believe in marriage and family. I'm not going to do it because if I get involved in a marriage and family, I'm acting white. I don't want to assimilate. I want baby mama culture. I want kids by every different woman in my neighborhood. And if I want babies by every different daddy in my neighborhood, can't assimilate with that. That's a pagan culture that the Bible instructs us to come out from among them. And the people that want to preach a wickedness based on skin color, I can't assimilate with them either. Because it's pagan culture that shows itself in many forms, in the abortion movement, in the racial idolatry, the black culture movement. That's all just pagan culture. I can't assimilate with it. I have to come out from among it. I just can't do it. And John Adams said, and he clearly had some discernment. And he could, like, hey, man, this country only works for a righteous Christian people of faith, people that want some level of right. That's the only way this country works. And we've allowed way too many secular values, way too many values antithetical to Christianity to invade this country and have say-so and significant say-so over how this country operates. And so I've been crying out, I've been praying, how do we get people to understand the value of adopting or at least appreciating a biblical worldview and understanding that's what the value in this country comes from. And so for those of you that tune in every day to hear me talk about sports, I'm going to give you some of that. But right now, we're at a critical stage in this country. This cultural divide is destroying America. God has put it on my heart. He's put it on my mind. He's given me a gift that I have to come out here on this show and warn you and scream to the hilltops, don't do what they're trying to destroy us. Don't leave this secular, demonic world to your kids and their grandkids. You're going to pay a price for that. All this chasing of money. You're not going to be able to wrap your kids in enough money to avoid the consequences of this pagan culture that we've all adopted, all affirmed. And so for those of you that's like, man, when I was growing up, kids weren't this confused about their gender. Kids weren't trying to have sex in first, second, and third grade, not in the numbers like they are now. And what you're failing to acknowledge is like this pagan culture that you're softly or enthusiastically participating in, refuse to reject. That's why your kids are suffering. That's why they have anxiety, they're hyped up on drugs, they're depressed, they're confused. You've allowed the confusion to come in with your desire to be tolerant of pagan culture. And they've told you that tolerance is the most important thing. And it's not. Obedience to God is the most important thing. Family, nuclear families, the most important thing. Being tolerant of other people's demonic culture and lifestyles. That's how we got here. That's why we have so much chaos and so many depressed kids, hyped up on drugs, kids committing suicide, kids, I'm a little boy, but I think I'm a little girl. There are consequences. So thank you all for being patient with me today. I hope that I haven't bored you. No, I'm getting out of here. I went to, sorry, Shemeka. Make sure you visit fearlessrollcall.com. Use the promo code 997, get half off on the, because I need you all there. This thing is more important than anybody making money. If I lose money on it by trying to get you all here to Nashville and trying to get you all to join hands with me and Tucker Carlson, I don't care at this point. I need the reinforcement that there are people that see what I see, share my values, want to support those values, and want to be inclusive and tolerant of people that embrace a biblical worldview. FearlessRollCall.com. Use the promo code 997. Get yourself a big 50% discount. All right, play tomorrow, and we'll see you next week.
Waiting for the countdown, coming off the breakdown, standing in line for freedom, looking for a breakout. freedom. Came like a fighter, striking like a ladder, making all this moves for freedom. I want freedom. No negotiation, my sister, no relation. We all just wanna have freedom. Sitting on a corner, never been alone. I'll break my back for freedom. Blessed, we are living, get back. We are receiving, all deceiving. We all wanna be free.